Jain everyone. Welcome you all to this lecture series called Four Exposition, Chaar Anuyog. We started this series a week back and we have completed one lecture out of this two lecture series. Today is the conclusion lecture. In the previous session, we have learned about the two Anuyog, which is Prathama Anuyog. Number second is Karana Anuyog. Today we will be learning about the other two Anuyog. Very privileged to have Somil Bhaiya with us. He has initiated this discussion. After the discussion, we have also discussed about how these two Anuyogs take us to Vitrakta. And today we will be learning about the other two Anuyogs. Before I hand over the mic to Somil Bhaiya, I wanted to introduce you all who have recently joined today in this session about this portal, this platform called Jeev. Jeev is Jain English Education and Values. On this platform, you will learn Jainism in English medium. More how to access these courses, what are the resources which we provide on this app, on this portal. We will talk about all those things in the later part of this lecture after the question and answer round of this discourse. So over to you, Somil Bhaiya. You can start.
Jai Jinendra, everyone. We will start with a short Mangala Charan. Please fold your hands. Namo Arihantanam, Namo Siddhanam, Namo Ayariyanam, Namo Uvajayanam, Namo Loe Savasahonam, Mangalam Bhagavan Viro, Mangalam Gautamo Gani, Mangalam Kunda Kundaryo, Jaina Dharmostu Mangalam. Jai Jinendra, everyone. We are talking about four expositions or Chaar Anuyog. During the last class, we had started looking at Prathama Anuyog and Charana Anuyog. Let us recap briefly before we dive into the two Anuyogs that we are going to see today, which is Charana Anuyog and Dravya Anuyog. Before we dive into individual Anuyogs, what are Jai Anuyogs? The Anuyogs is the message of Sri Jinendra Bhagwan, the omniscient God, one who has known everything in one moment, all the three time scales, as well as the entire universe, in just one moment, as if he is seen like a pratyaksha in his any substance in his own hands. It is that clear to him. This knowledge, when he is transmitting this knowledge through Divya Dvani or the divine sermon, Gandhar Bhagwan would digest as much as he can, and he will convert that into 12 ang or 12 ang of Shrut Skand, Jinwani Mata. This 12 ang is where the message of Sri Omniscient Gods is captured and translated so that seekers like us can understand it. The
Excuse me,
message are
Somil Bhaiya.
expositions. The individuals can understand. Some people are interested to learn stories. For them, Pratman Yogs are 63 important in the form of their. Yes.
Actually,
Yes,
you were
Harshit
not
here.
audible. That's what I was pointing out. Now you,
Am I audible
yes,
now?
now you are.
Okay, okay. I'm sorry for that. So, the omniscient God, his knowledge is transmitted through Gandhar Bhagwan into the Jinwani Mata. This knowledge is captured in form of four expositions or Char Anuyog. The purpose of these four expositions is to get individual seekers detached from various passions and get them on the marg of Vitaragata. We had seen that these four expositions are Pratmanuyog, that talks about biographies or stories of 63 important people that existed during Chaturthakal. Second is Karana Anuyog. This exposition talks about the nature of the universe or karma or jeev ke parinam into a language that we can understand. Third is Charna Anuyog, which we will look today. This exposition talks about conducts or external ethics. And fourth, which is one of the most important ones, is Dravya Anuyog, that talks about the nature of substance, the metaphysics, how this universe works, and what is the true path to salvation. In the last class, we had spoken about Pratman Yog and Karnan Yog. In Pratman Yog, we had seen that Pratman Yog talks about the peculiarity and absurdity of mundane existence, which is Sansar ki Vichitrata. It also talks about the consequences of various good deeds and bad deeds, or Punya and Pap ke phal. And it talks about the conducts that the enlightened soul, when they lived, how they lived. Uh, it talks about their stories, what kind of parinam did they go through, and what kind of fruits did they bear to them. Based on their examples, this exposition tries to teach us how the good or bad deeds or virtues and sins are all very futile, and it only leads us to continuous cycles of life and death through Chargati. Then we spoke about Karna Anuyog. Karna Anuyog is a scripture that talks about how omniscient gods are seeing the cosmology, or how they are seeing the nature of living beings, how they are organized in Sansar or Chargati. What is the astronomy? How the karma and jeev interacts with each other. All of these very minute topics, which can be known only in the Keval Gnan or omniscient knowledge, is translated to us in a language that we can understand by means of Karnan Yog. So Karnan Yog actually helps us understand very, very minute topics of this universe with our small knowledge, with our very little knowledge. As we spoke about, the Karnan Yog talks about few different things. One is, what are different spiritual stages that a living being goes through from this mundane universe to the path of salvation, which is called as Gunasthan. Second, this also Karnan Yoga also talks about what are different types of life forms or the soul quests or Marganasthan that Jeev goes through, or what are different type of life forms that Jeev acquires. It also talks about how Jeev and Karma interact with each other, what kind of bondage they have with each other, and how does one influence each other by means of Nimit Naimitik Sambandha. Karana Yoga also talks about the nature of cosmos or the three worlds, and where does each type of four life forms live. Finally, Karana Yoga also uses mathematics to depict different uh, different passions of jeev or jeev ke different parinam by means of karma or by means of different units. It also talks about distances and times, and it talks about the infinite lifespan that this soul has had in sansar in four different life forms. By means of discussing all of this, Karana Anuyog attempts to explain what is the true nature of this universe so that the mundane soul, who's so attached to various materialistic things in this life form, can get detached from all of those worldly pleasures, which are actually unhappiness only. It can get detached and walk towards the path of passionlessness or path of Vitragta. With that as a prelogue, let's jump into our topic for today, which is Charnanyog and Dravyanyog. We will start with Charnanyog. Charnanyog, as the name suggests, Charan Anuyog. Charan means the conduct. When a Gyani Dharmatma or enlightened soul is experiencing soul within himself, the external life, the way he or she lives, is what is guided by Charananyog. So Charananyog guides or illuminates what is the true ethical path that defines the right doing and the wrong doing, and the settings, the conducts, the ascetics and householders like us goes through. The enlightened souls can be of two types. One is ascetics or the called munis, and the second is householders or also known as shravaks. When one experiences the soul, initially the soul achieves fourth gunasthan, which is known as avirat samyak drishti gunasthan. In this life form, the soul has just experienced itself, but yet externally it doesn't have any type of vrat. That's why they are called avirat. As the depth of experience, self experience increases, the soul automatically starts getting disconnected from various worldly pleasures, and he feels like taking different vrat. The ultimate stage of this is called Sakal Vrati, which is a stage of Muni Dasha or ascetic life form. In this entire journey from Avirat to Sakal Vrati, the external life of the human being changes drastically by means of the ethical conduct that the human being pursues or the nature of partial or complete vows that he or she takes. The scriptures which describe all of these principles or all of these actions is known as Charananyog scriptures. Charananyog describes few different things. Number one, it talks about the rules of conduct that are suitable for ascetics and laypersons, as we just discussed. Charananyog also prescribes what is the moral and ethical lifestyle that every seeker at every stage of their life must follow. There are two different types of seekers, as we just spoke about. One is a householder and one is an ascetic. The householder have their own separate six different must do's in their daily conduct, whereas ascetics have their separate six different must do's in their everyday life. The scripture that describes all of these avashyak or must do is known as Charananyog. Lastly, Charananyog also inspires the seekers to avoid various sinful things which is out there in the materialistic world that only would gather sins or bad karma to the seeker. This bad karma can come either through mental activity or speech activities or bodily activities, and that's why the scripture talks about how to avoid all of these sinful activities by means of right ethical and moral conduct. Let's look at what is the purpose of the scripture. The purpose of Charan Yoga, or for that matter, any of the four expositions, is always to get the seeker on the right path towards passionlessness, which is Vitaragata. However, Charan Yoga in specific talks about uh, what is the external conduct or outward conduct of a soul who has experienced himself. By means of this outward conduct, uh, the other souls also who have not experienced themselves can see how the experienced soul is behaving in the universe or is behaving in the world outside. So by means of this, even the unexperienced soul can mimic or copy so that it can reduce its sinful activities. Second, this scripture morally explains through religious activities various uh, various sins that one must abandon. There are five different types of sin that are well known according to Jainism: hinsa, jhoot, chori, kushil, or parigraha. The right way to avoid these five sinful activities, to either partially avoid them by means of anuvrat or completely avoid them by means of mahavrat, is explained in the scripture, is Charananyog scripture. Charananyog also aims to reduce the passions of mundane soul while embracing purity of their sentiments through moral actions. So Charananyog also describes the day-to-day activities or the day-to-day actions that every seeker must go through so that they can purify their own thoughts and stay away from the sinful external activities. And Charan Yoga also describes what is the right way of following those conduct. You in the pictures, you can see the water filtration technique. What is the right way to filter water, so that one can prevent any unnecessary hinsa or any unnecessary killing of aquatic life forms. It also talks about various food items that one can eat and one cannot eat at all different types of stages of conduct. So, by means of all of this, again, Charnan Yoga describes mainly the external, outwardly activities of the experienced soul. But the purpose of this Anuyog is not only to show the outwardly activities. The purpose of this Anuyog to eventually, by means of outward activity, uh, point a finger to how the experienced soul is experiencing his own soul and gaining the eternal pleasure from within. So, to a non experienced soul, when he or she sees the outwardly activity of the experienced soul, he or she must try to understand what is the inner process that the experienced soul is going through. It's an indirect way to understand the inner activity of the experienced soul, which eventually leads even the non experienced soul on the path of passionlessness or vitaragata. Now let's jump into the fourth and the last Anuyog, but one of the most important one, Dravya. Dravya, as the name suggests, it talks about the nature of various substances in the universe. This talks about the true philosophy of how this universe works. So, this scripture unfolds the essence of philosophy. It talks about six substances, it talks about seven elements, it talks about how to discriminate the soul and the rest of the world so that soul can be detached from its own ill thoughts as well as external materialistic things, and soul can experience itself so that it can achieve the eternal bliss. There are various things which are part of Dravyan Yoga as per as the scripture defines. The definition of Dravyan Yoga is it describes the nature of substance and its attributes and modifications, what we call as Dravya, Gun, and Paryay. It also talks about Sat Tattva or seven elements. It talks about Bhed Gnan. It talks about all of this by means of different Nay and Praman. An eventual objective of discussing all of this is to understand one's own soul or Atma Swabhav and experience one's own soul. Experiencing the soul is the most important aspect of, uh, of the path of salvation, which is described in a direct way in Dravya Yoga. All of the other three Anuyogs talks about experience of the soul in an indirect fashion, either through stories or through karma or through external conducts. But Dravya Yoga talks about self experience in a direct fashion, which is called Nishchaynay. So Dravya Yoga scriptures are Nishchaynay scriptures, and it that's why it is also called as Adhyatma Shastra. It covers six substances. As we discussed earlier, six substances are Jeev, Pudgal, Dharmastikai, Adharmastikai, Akash, and Kal. There is a separate session on the Geo portal on these six substances, which you can read and understand in more detail. Similarly, Dravya Anuyog talks about seven elements, such as Jeev, Ajeev, Asrav Bandh, Samvar, Nirjra, and Moksha. Jeev and Ajeev together, they make up all the substances in this universe. Jeev and Ajeev tries to put my own soul in one side and rest everything on the other side in Ajeev. The remaining five elements talks really about my own modifications, or it really talks about my own one momentary paryay. So Asrav and Bandh are the sinful paryay, or they are ashuddha modifications of the soul. Samvar and Nirjra are partially pure, anshik shuddha modifications or paryay, and Moksha is purna shuddha paryay. Moksha depicts the eventual destination that soul would like to achieve to experience the eternal bliss. And all of the other elements describe a path to reach there. So, eventual objective of seven elements that is described in Dravya Anuyog is to describe the entire path of how a worldly soul can achieve moksha or salvation. Dravya Anuyog also uses various viewpoints, conventional as well as real viewpoint, to explain the true nature of the soul. It also explains how one can bifurcate the true nature of soul from the rest of the world to experience the real nature of soul. It talks about the real path of liberation and how to differentiate the real soul and the rest of the world by means of Bhedagnan. By means of various shastras in Dravya Anuyog, the purpose of the message that is conveyed here is to gain the comprehensive knowledge of the soul, which is praman, but also try to understand the soul from its different viewpoints, which is nai. The Dravyan Yog also helps us achieve the right belief, which is impossible without really understanding the true nature of soul. And the true nature of soul is explained only in Dravyan Yog. So Dravyan Yog is pivotal to really experience the soul. That's why these scriptures are also referred as Parmagam. It describes the path of self realization, step by step, inch by inch, how one should proceed from where we are, what type of mistakes one does at each stage of the path of salvation is what is very described in very detailed manner in Dravya Yogas. Dravya Yog also helps promote introspection. Dravya Yog are not scriptures which one can just start and keep reading to finish the books. They are not designed, or they are the purpose of Dravya Anuyog scriptures is not to finish them, is to read them, think about it, and just stay within. The purpose of these scriptures is to introspect constantly at each and every paragraph or each and every sentence. Each and every word of Dravyanyug scripture describes us or indicates us towards the true soul and thus the path to liberation. The purpose of these scriptures is to also show both auspicious and inauspicious sentiments, not only punya and pap, but these scriptures also show us the shuddha and ashuddha avastha or sentiments. As you can see by the pictures here, it's only those true shuddha parinam that leads to the true nature of the soul, which is without any bondages. Otherwise, both good deeds and bad deeds are both ashuddha parinam, and leads to karma bondages, which eventually leads to the four different life forms and constant miseries of life and death. Eventually, our own soul is the only refuge. It is the only way to eliminate all the passions and to fulfill our ultimate desire of becoming happy. So, experiencing one's own soul is the sole purpose of Dravya Anuyog scripture, and rest all is the details of the same. So, we have learnt about four different expositions or Char Anuyog. What are their definitions? What do those expositions describe? And eventually, what is the purpose of those expositions? We saw that from all the expositions, eventually we arrive at the path to passionlessness or vitaragata. Let's look at some of the examples of what are the scriptures that are written in these fashion. Let me just remind everyone again. Four Expositions is not the name of the scripture by itself, but it is the way in which the scriptures are written. It is the writing style, or it is the message or the style of giving a message by that particular exposition. So we can see that Pratmanayog, the Shastras in this style are Padma Puran, Harivansh Puran, Mahapuran, Vardhman Charitra, etc. You can see that most of these or all of these are stories of different uh, important people that existed during the fourth era. In Karana Anuyog, we can see famous Shastras such as Sri Shatkhandagam, which was the first written Shastra ever. Based on the same messages, there are other scriptures like Gomatsar, Jeevkand and Karmakand, Triloksar, Kshapanasar, Tiloi Pannati Adi, etc. There are many books which are written in Karana Anuyog style. Shastras written in Charana style are Astapahud, Niyam Sarji, Moolacharji, Ratnakaran Shravakachar, etc. If you can see, these type of scriptures are generally can be classified in two types. One is a Shravakachar, which talks about the outwardly conducts of Shravak, or second type of Shastra are Achar of Sri Muniraj, which describe the outwardly conduct of ascetics. So Shastras like Ratnakaran Shravakachar, Purshart Siddhi Upay, these are Shravakachar Shastras. And the Shastras that describe the outwardly conduct of ascetics are Ashtapahud or Padmanandi, Bhagavati Aradhana, etc. These are Shastras that describe the outwardly conduct of ascetics. Lastly, but most importantly, Dravya the Shastras that are written in this type of Shaili are Samay Sarji, Pravachan Sarji, Yog Sarji, Panchasikai, etc. All of these Shastras, they generally describe the six elements or six dravyas or seven elements of the universe that helps us understand the true nature of soul and eventually experiencing that soul to attain the path of salvation. Important points as we are studying these four expositions. Number one, see, all the four expositions may differ in their subject matter or their style of teaching, but ultimate objective of all of them is not different. The ultimate objective of all of them is to ensure that it guides the mundane soul to the path of passionlessness. One has to realize that there are many different types of life in this universe, and all the humans especially, we are all of different style. Some people like mathematics, some people like stories, some people like outwardly conduct, and they are interested and motivated by those type of messages to ensure that every type of human is inspired by the message given by the omniscient Sri Acharya Bhagwan has written these scriptures also in different styles. So, a person with a particular liking, when reads that type of scripture, gets motivated by it towards the path of Vitragta. Similarly, another person who has another type of liking gets motivated by another type of scripture. So, every scripture, while it describes the nature of universe or subject matter differently, the eventual purpose is to drive a mundane soul towards passionlessness. In general, there is no specific order in which these four expositions should be read or studied. Some people may misunderstand that Prathamanuyog means it is to be read first, Pratham, right? But that's not the right interpretation, as it is mentioned in the third point here. Pratham means avyutpanna mithya drishti, which means Pratham means a soul that is in the first level of understanding, that is in the very initial stage of religious understanding. So, a Pratmanuyog is one that is very appealing to a normal mundane soul that is attached to all the worldly beings. The stories of important people motivates him or her to get detached from these worldly things, and eventually it drives the soul towards vitragta. Let's move forward. The initial step on the path to liberation, the very first step, is always the right belief or samyak darshan. No matter which type of exposition one is reading, one may be reading about the stories of important people, or one may be reading the outwardly conduct of ascetics. But the eventual purpose of reading all of this is to understand that only by experiencing the true soul one can achieve the true happiness, which is mentioned directly in Dravya Anuyog and indirectly in the other Anuyogs. So, the eventual purpose of all of these expositions is to drive a mundane soul towards self experience, Atmanubhav, which will help us achieve the right belief or Samyak Darshan. It's only after achieving the right belief one can one should follow the external conduct or Charananuyog. I would say it is not even one should follow. It is after getting the right belief, the external conduct automatically becomes like what is described in Charananuyog. One would automatically get detached from the worldly passions and get uh, slowly but surely restricted within oneself, and automatically he or she will feel like becoming disconnected from the world. And that disconnection, in other words, is the vrat that uh, the experienced soul undertakes. So, if a person begins to develop an ego about its knowledge or capabilities, then studying Karana Anuyog helps him or her realize that, see, the universe is such a huge place where we as a soul is so tiny. The knowledge in this universe of the omniscient is so infinite that our knowledge is so tiny that there is nothing to be egoistic about. If we talk about wealth, that I have become very rich, then the wealth of the heavenly beings is so enormous that our ego gets shattered very easily. So the purpose of Karna Yoga is to showcase the true nature of various life forms out there, so that in this human life form one doesn't get carried away by these sensual pleasures or by external materialistic things and get disconnected from all of these to get directed towards one's own soul. So, important points. Depending on one's spiritual circumstances or depending on one's specific circumstances or individual ability, ability to know, comprehend, digest, or the nature of one's own wisdom or his own style of learning. Each Anuyog or each exposition could be beneficial to one person versus the other. One should constantly study all four type of expositions to keep one's thoughts engaged always in the religious activity. There is no one type of exposition that one can keep reading and keep focusing or get engrossed in those type of messages. So one should constantly keep changing the expositions and keep the thoughts engaged so that one doesn't get carried away in external sinful activities. Dravya Anuyog and Charana Anuyog should be comprehending or should be supplementing each other. One cannot say that okay, I'm following my inner thoughts by means of Dravya Anuyog, but I am following my outwardly conduct as described in Charana Anuyog. It should be in such a way that when one soul is engrossed within, the external conduct will automatically become as described in the Charana Anuyog. So they always go hand in hand. Let's summarize our session on the four expositions. Prathman Yog, it talks about biographies or stories of important illustrious individuals such as Tirthankars, Chakravartis, Kamdevs, or Balbhadra Narayan, etc., which are known as Shalaka Purush. The way they lived their life, the way they obtained that position, how they got engaged in good or bad deeds or activities, and what were the fruits of those activities is what is described in Prathmanuyug. It leads mundane soul like us to wonder that even those illustrious individuals like them actually left everything to become an ascetic. That's the correct path that I should also follow. Second is Karana Anuyog. It delves into the technical matters of karma, universe, astronomy, soul's different type of parinam, and describes it in a way that we can understand how omniscients would be knowing them in our simple language. Third is Charnan Yog, the exposition that talks about the appropriate vows and conducts that each individual should adopt, whether it is a household or ascetic, as per their inner thoughts or inner experiences. And lastly, Dravyani Yoga. This exposition talks about substances and its true nature and how one should understand one's own soul's nature and get and try to get the self realization or self experience, which is the eventual summary of all four expositions. All of these four expositions are foundational to our Jain philosophy, and omniscients themselves have delivered message which is captured in these four expositions. So none of the four is less or more, but all of them describe the messages from the omniscient in their own style. So one should try to derive the message from each of them and eventually try to strike the objective of experiencing one's own soul. With that, let me stop here and see if you have any questions that we can discuss.
Can you ensure your screen, Bhaiya?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So thank you so much for this beautiful lecture. Conclusion to this series. Just a sec. Okay. So in today's lecture, we have concluded this series, the second lecture, four expositions, and we have learned about the two Anuyogs, which is Dravya Anuyog and Chanda Anuyog. As we discussed in the earlier lectures also, all the four expositions, all the four Anuyog will take you, the Vitaragta will take you to Vitaragta. They will start at point A. Every story, or maybe you will try to learn about some concepts of Dravigun Paryay. They will start at point A, The conclusion is Siddhidasha. That is the end. So the main essence of reading or learning these four Anuyogs are Vitaragta. Now the session is open for discussion. If anybody has any questions in and around the topic, you can put up, or you want to add any point, feel free to raise your point. Anyone? Okay, let me start then. So Malbia, there is one query which I feel should be entertained here and discussed here. Last time also we discussed about how Karananuyog, how Teen Lok ka Varnan can take you to Vitragta. We can conclude Vitragta out of it. Now my query is, since we talk about Vitragta, which is absence of rag, when we follow Chandanuyog, we follow kindness, we follow non-violence principles, we don't eat roots, we don't kill mosquitoes because there is daya bhav, there is kindness, there is some sort of rag. How can we conclude Vitragta out of this rag?
Hmm. Yeah, very good question, Harshil Bhaiya. Uh, See, eventual objective of every soul is Vitaragata. But Vitaragata is a state of completion which only Aryant Bhagwan or the Utkrushta Muniraj, Uttam Antaratma, would only achieve. The scriptures that are written in Charanan Yoga exposition, they talk either about Shravaks like us, or they talk about ascetics, Moniraj, who are in sixth or seventh Gunasthan. So Shravak and Moniraj, both of these are still on the path of Vitaragata, have not completely achieved Vitaragata, but they have begun their journey, they have experienced their soul, and they are onwards. They have taken different vows or vrat, whether those vrat are partial vrat or they are complete vrat. But by means of these different type of vows, both of these, the householders and ascetics, they're still on the path of Vitaragta. So they have partially achieved passionlessness and partially they are still in Rag Parinam. What we see in external conduct of both of these type of souls is their Rag aspect, which is depicted by means of their external conduct. So we don't kill mosquitoes or we depict Daya Bhav. All of these are the portion of Rag Bhav which householders or ascetics still have and have not gotten rid of. The other aspect, which is their passionlessness, which exists in the same paryaya or same modification, is the amount of peace or amount of self uh, uh, experience that they have achieved, which is the true vitragata. So the external conduct of householders or ascetics is not the true vitragata, but it describes the outwardly behavior which others can see. Otherwise, the true experience of soul cannot be seen by others. So this is easy to see, and that's why it is described in Charananyog exposition.
Got it. Thank you, Vaya, for answering this query. Uh, Anybody, any other questions or any point of discussion? You can even type on the chat box. Okay, I think we are good to go. So
Okay.
before we conclude this lecture, let me shortly introduce you all to the access points of Chief Portal. So to the people who have joined this session for the very first time today, we have summarized the access points in the four bullet points. Visit the Jeev website under the resources section. As you can see on the screenshot, you can navigate the topic you want to explore. Let's say in this screenshot, you can see Four Exposition, today's topic. When you click on the topic, you will receive a link To access the course, this red box which you can see, access course, is what you need to click. Once you click it, you can view the courses on your dashboard. This is a course overview, how what's the duration of this course, what is the mode of learning, everything will be on your screen. Once you select the course you wish to access, let's say Four Expositions here, you will gain entry to its content, including articles, presentations, quizzes, and more. So here the video section, which is the lecture section, is what we are recording today. So this is a live lecture, but tomorrow or maybe day after tomorrow, after 36 hours or 48 hours, we will upload this entire session to YouTube. So you can access that YouTube link through this portal also. And also, if you need to directly go through YouTube, you can press the bell icon, subscribe to the GIF portal channel, and all the lectures will be there in a playlist format. These are the accessible URLs. If you have any query anywhere to access anything, support@gif.net.in is the email address. You can email us your query and we will help you connecting with the representative. Or if you have any Tatvik query which you need to connect with the Vidwan, let's say Somil Bhaiya for this lecture, we will help you connecting them. So yeah, that's all for today. Somil Bhaiya, we can conclude with Mangla Sharan.
Okay. We will say a short Jinwani Stuti. Please hold your hands. हे जिनवाणी भारती तो ही जपो दिन रैन जो तेरी शरणाग्रहे सो पावे सुख चैन जावाणी के ज्ञान ते सूझे लोकालोक सो वाणी मस्तक नमो सदा देत हूँ ढोक बोलो चौबीसों भगवान की
Jai
जय
Ho.
हो
जय
बोलो
हो
जुनवाणी मात की
Jai
जय
जय
Ho.
हो
हो
बोलो चलते फिरते मुनिराजों की जय
Jai
जय
Ho.
हो
हो
बोलो अपने अनंत उपकारी श्री कहान गुरुदेव की
Jai
जय
जय
Ho.
हो
हो
कृष्णमूर्ति भगवती मात की जय
जय
हो
हो
सत्य सनातन दिगंबर जैन धर्म की
की
Jai.
जय हो
जय हो
9 times Namo.